Kyle Busch solidifies that his comeback season is alive and well and the playoff grid tightens up. Let's talk about NASCAR in St. Louis. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in St. Louis, out in the Midwest, where Kyle Busch gets his third win of the season, tying him at the top of the playoff leaderboard for most wins this year with William Byron at 3. And of course, the playoff leaderboard tightens up as guys like Alex Bowman have bad days. Daniel Suarez gets a top 10 finish. We'll break all of it down on Dirty Air. I'm excited for it. We have a jam-packed show to talk about. First off, I did enjoy the race today. We had a few comers and goers. It looked like Ryan Blaney was really fast at the beginning of the race, especially under the maybe warmer track temperatures. Because remember, this is almost like last week. It was cloudy conditions. The sun continued to go down. The track temperature continued to cool after we had that lightning delay. Remember, we had like a 2-hour lightning delay, so it was a long day in St. Louis with that delay. I think we had a couple other red flags after that for brake rotors blowing up, and that obviously made the race go a little bit later on. But Kyle Busch's car, with the adjustments he made, really came to life when the sun went down, and with the adjustments he made, and with a really good last pit stop as well, the money stop, Kyle Busch was able to get out front and get that third win of the season. Ryan Blaney, like I said, was really fast. When the sun was out early on in the race, Kyle Busch came to life. Looked like Denny Hamlin was coming to life as well. But Denny Hamlin just didn't have what Kyle Busch had at the end. Kyle Busch was obviously the dominant driver, I believe, leading the most laps today. And by the way, Kyle Busch receives 1 point less than the max amount of points you can receive in a race, which is 60. He will receive 59 with the Stage 1 win, second in Stage 2, and obviously the race win. So this is exciting for Kyle Busch. This is his 63rd career NASCAR win, obviously his third with RCR. This is the first time he's got 3 wins, at least 3 wins, in a single season since 2019 when he won the championship. So the last 2 years, or the last 3 years following that, definitely not so great for Kyle Busch considering Kyle Busch's standards. And this is also Kyle Busch's first win in St. Louis, as this is only the second Cup race there, but this is Kyle Busch's 25th different racetrack that he has won at in the Cup Series. So 25 different racetracks Kyle Busch has won at. Super impressive, and it's an already impressive season for Kyle Busch. But the one thing that I think is really important about this win from the others, we had the one at Fontana, where Kyle Busch has been fast all year at the intermediate style tracks, the banked 1.5 mile tracks or 2 mile tracks like Auto Club is. It's considered an intermediate style track, Auto Club, where he got the first win of the year. Talladega is just a completely different monster. Very few tracks on the circuit outside of Daytona and Atlanta are similar to Talladega, where he got his second win. This win's impressive because this is a racetrack that's flat and more of a slow speed track. It's not a short track because it's obviously 1.25 miles, but it drives like a short track in a way, is probably the best way I can explain it, which we have a few other tracks like that as well, like New Hampshire and a few other tracks you can add on that list. But this is a track similar to Phoenix, where the championship is, a flat, short pace, slower pace racetrack, not a lot of banking. It's good to see Kyle Busch have speed at that track and have tremendous speed, dominant speed today at that racetrack, considering, the way this first portion of the season has gone. I wouldn't have expected Kyle Busch to win at this track. I mean, did awful at Phoenix earlier on in the year this year. Did awful at Martinsville. Both of those flat tracks has not been good at the shorter ovals or the less banking ovals. And Kyle Busch obviously came to life today, super fast all day long, and it's good to see that we're seeing speed on a variety of racetracks from Kyle Busch. Obviously, the win at Fontana was great. We're seeing speed through the month of May, and we're seeing that continue over into tonight in St. Louis. We'll have to see how he does next week in Sonoma. So big win for Kyle Busch, like I said, tied now for the most wins this season, which will jump him up to the top of the playoff leaderboard, or maybe second in the playoff leaderboard, but he's in the top 2, tied with William Byron for wins. So let's stop talking about my driver, Kyle Busch, because we have a whole lot of other action to get into. There was a lot of action during the day, a lot more passing than I thought we were going to see. I know Dirty Air did play a pretty big role. Track position was definitely key, but you did see a lot of passing through the field as well. Let's take a look at the top 10 here. Obviously, Kyle Busch got the win. Denny Hamlin finishing in the second position behind Kyle Busch. Like I said, his car was another one of those cars that came to life when the sun went down. By the way, Denny Hamlin's also having kind of a quiet, very impressive season. Got the win at Kansas, but is consistently in the top 10, where his teammate Christopher Bell has been consistently running worse and getting caught up in a lot of trouble. Because, earlier in the year I was talking about how Christopher Bell is probably the best Joe Gibbs driver. I think it's starting to switch now. Maybe Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr. are becoming the best two Joe Gibbs driver, but especially Denny Hamlin right now with the win at Kansas, and then obviously running a little bit more consistently than Truex, maybe just by a few positions weekly, what tends to be. Joey Logano didn't have a whole lot of speed, able to use strategy to get up through the field. Like I said, track position was key. Logano was able to use that strategy, get on the same tire cycle as everybody else, get a solid third place finish. And Logano has been one of the drivers that has not had a ton of speed this season, but his crew chief, I think it's still the one he had last year. Paul Wolf, I believe, is his crew chief, making some right calls above the pit box, especially at these types of races where track position's key, to get him up front and give him at least an opportunity for good position. So Logano might not be the fastest car, might not be a top 10 car every week, but is getting stage points and getting decent finishes considering the speed he shows throughout the entire race. Kyle Larson, who tried to hold off these guys, restarted second with on the final overtime restart. Larson restarted on the inside row. Kyle Larson was on two tires. The two tires eventually fell off so much, so he did fall back to fourth. Martin Truex Jr., once again, another one of those Joe Gibbs Toyotas, starting to show a lot of speed, finishing in the top 5. Ryan Blaney, once again, last week's Coke 600 winner, back into the top 10. Once again this week, a very consistent driver. You're starting to see the same drivers, and you can take a look at the playoff grid of drivers that have already won a race, which we have 10 drivers that have won. Those drivers tend to be the drivers running up front week in and week out, with the exception of obviously a couple of positions. You have Daniel Suarez, who I talked about how Trackhouse has not had a whole lot of speed lately. Daniel Suarez was obviously a top 10 car all day long, started in the back, worked his way up into the top 10, so a decent run for Suarez, who's on the playoff cut line. We'll look at that in just a little bit. We have William Byron, who looked to be faster at the beginning of the race, then faded a little bit when the sun went down. William Byron with a decent 8th place finish, but considering how William Byron has run this season, a potential championship favorite this season with Kyle Busch and maybe a couple other guys, but really the championship favorite right now is William Byron. You still have to say that. Finishing 8th, very disappointing. Want to find a little bit more speed in there going into Sonoma next week. Michael McDowell with a decent 9th place finish. Another one of those drivers trying to get some points with just a few races left to get to the playoffs, trying to find some points so he can point his way in to the NASCAR playoffs. As right now, I believe he's 35 points out. Once again, we'll take a better look at that. And Kevin Harvick, once again, continues to be your best SHR Ford, running in the top 10, another top 10 for Kevin Harvick in his final season. Once again, really the only driver at that team, at that Stewart-Haas Racing team, showing a whole lot of speed. We had Briscoe, who was fast today, but got caught up in early trouble, and then Priest and Almirola have just been out of the race. It feels like this season. A couple other drivers I want to talk about are definitely the drivers that were subbing in, which is Carson Hocevar and obviously Corey LaJoie. So we had Carson Hocevar was running Corey LaJoie's car because Corey LaJoie was filling in for Chase Elliott, who was suspended. Well, Corey LaJoie actually was able to finish 21st today in the 9 car in the Hendrick Chevrolet. Probably not the run that he was looking for. Probably wanted to aim for a top 10, I think, in the 9 car with an experienced driver like Corey LaJoie. Has raced a lot of races in the Cup Series. You would think he would want to take that car to a top 10 or at least a top 20. Finished 25th, so definitely not a super impressive run today by Corey LaJoie. I don't think that means Corey LaJoie's not talented at all. I think there just hasn't been a lot of speed in that 9 car all year, like we're used to seeing, which is championship favorite. And then, of course, didn't really show a whole lot of speed today either. Alex Bowman was another one of those drivers. Didn't have a whole lot of speed, was outside the top 10, but inside the top 20 for most of the day. So Corey LaJoie finishing 21st. Carson Hocevar, meanwhile, was filling in for Corey LaJoie in the 7 Spire Motorsports car, while Carson Hocevar, who's, I think he's full-time in the trucks right now, raced a few Xfinity races, has a good personality. I've heard a couple of his interviews lately. I'm kind of becoming a Carson Hocevar fan in a way. He made his Cup Series debut today and was running in the top 20. He was actually up to 16th. He was passing guys. You saw him. He started outside the top 20, was able to work in his way in the top 20. He was 16th when a brake rotor failed, and that's also another concern I'll talk about as well, because we had many drivers with brake rotors blowing up on the racetrack, and he went and slammed the wall. He was the first to do so. He made a smart decision to turn the car into the wall, so it was a less heavy hit where he turned down, flew across the track in the wall. So smart move by Carson Hocevar, but running that number 7 car in the top 20, running in the 16th position at the time, I think could turn some eyeballs for him for finding a ride for next season, whether that's in the trucks, Xfinity, or wherever he may land, definitely made an impression today. Was probably the top storyline of the race in the first half of the race before that brake rotor failed, obviously. So just wanted to mention those two guys. Let's take a look at the calculated. These are my calculations for the current playoff standings. This is obviously the cut line. You have Brad Keselowski, who's 96 points above. Didn't have a good day today at all. Brad Keselowski came out the gate slow, went multiple laps down. I want to say he got back on the lead lap before this race was over with all the cautions at the end, but just had a terrible day for Brad Keselowski. Had no speed, had issues under the hood at the beginning portions of the race, but still 96 points above. Like I said, I think he's safe as long as nothing drastically crazy happens. Chris Buescher, same type deal. Buescher didn't show a whole lot of speed today either. His teammate, 86 points above, though. Still safe. Just run decent. I think these guys can make it in unless we get some fluke winners or something drastic happens to these drivers. I think those two will make it in based off the speed they've shown this year and where they're at in the points right now. Bubba Wallace obviously was having a really good day till, once again, one of those victims of the brake rotors blew. He's now 15th on the playoff grid, but he's 27 points above. But he's been showing a lot of speed. Just want to try to eliminate the problems that he's had at the beginning of the year. But, he's been running in the top 10, finished second in the All-Star race, top 10 last week. He's been running somewhat more impressive this season. I think he will make the 16-driver playoffs if he can just, obviously there could be some winners with some of the races we have coming up, like, Daytona, Atlanta, the Chicago Street Course. That could produce a surprise winner, but I think right now Bubba Wallace, with the speed he's shown, kind of the same situation with Keselowski and Buescher, will make it into the playoffs this season. Daniel Suarez is on the cut line right now with a solid 7th place finish today. He is 6 points above, but that's not where I want to be. Like I said, we have Daytona, Atlanta, Sonoma next week, a road course race. We have the Chicago Street Course. We don't know who could win those races. If that creates a surprise winner, or even just a winner like Chase Elliott that wouldn't be a surprise winner below the cut line, that moves the cut line up one spot if somebody below wins, and that would knock Suarez out. So I think you definitely want to be at least 15th, because I don't think anybody's going to catch Buescher with the way it's looking right now, at least. Still a lot of races to go, but I think you want to at least be 15th with the way the grid looks right now. Alex Bowman didn't have a good day whatsoever. 6 points below, does fall 6 points below. I believe he was up by 5 points last week. Ty Gibbs, 15 points out. Austin Cindric, 33 points out. And Michael McDowell with the top 10 run today, trying to eat into that points deficit, 35 points out. By the way, I talked about Chase Briscoe, who didn't finish today's race. I think he got 2 points on the day. He got a 120-point penalty, which has essentially taken him out and taken his season and thrown it in the trash can. So that's unfortunate for him. One other concern I have, like I said, was those brake rotors. I think that's something that NASCAR and the teams obviously need to look into. That's very dangerous. You have brake rotors exploding on the racetrack. Noah Gragson had a really heavy hit. That's scary. It obviously messes with the flow of the race. We had a couple of cautions late in the race and early in the race due to that. Really frustrating to see those issues continue to happen. Definitely needs to be looked into by the teams, which they will, and definitely needs to be looked to by NASCAR to try to fix this problem. It's a dangerous problem, really a safety hazard, and it interrupts the flow of the race, but most importantly, a safety hazard for sure. But that's it. That's really all there is to talk about following NASCAR in St. Louis. I do like this racetrack. Another thing we need to work on is obviously, the package with the flat racetracks. There was a lot of dirty air, but we did see a good amount of passing as well, but definitely still need some improvements. But I enjoyed the race, and I hope you all enjoyed the race. And obviously, if you like the show, like and subscribe if you like the video. And of course, about Kyle Busch getting that 3rd win of the NASCAR season, let's get rowdy.